With Microsoft's recent announcement that Great Plains is going to go away and no longer be supported after 2028, a lot of organizations are asking, what do we do now? How do we move to the next technology that we're going to deploy as an organization? So what exactly is it you need to do and know about the Great Plains end of life and your future path forward? That's what I want to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. And not too long ago, Microsoft announced that they were going to sunset Microsoft Great Plains. Great Plains, if you don't know, is a product that they acquired years ago, and a lot of organizations, believe it or not, are still using Great Plains. But since Microsoft is really doubling down and focusing on Microsoft Dynamics D365, what they're doing is they're trying to move their customers off of the older legacy platforms like Great Plains. And so with this looming deadline hovering over the market's heads right now and Microsoft customers' heads right now, the question becomes, what do we do? How do we move away from Microsoft Great Plains? And even more fundamentally, what is the right solution or what's the right path forward? So that's what I want to do today is talk about how to assess the situation that you're in if you're using Great Plains and really understand what your path forward might be. Now, for more information about this topic that I'm going to talk about today, there's two white papers that I encourage you to download. One is our Guide to a Successful Microsoft Implementation, which is a technology-agnostic view of best practices of how to deploy Microsoft D365 and other Microsoft technologies. And if you're not sure that Microsoft is the direction you're going to go, I also encourage you to download our Digital Transformation Report, which is an annual report we publish each year that provides a number of independent software reviews and rankings, as well as implementation and general digital transformation best practices. So I encourage you to download either or both of those white papers. They're free downloads. I've included links to those below. The first thing to understand and acknowledge in this situation with Microsoft end of life with Great Plains is that this is a manufactured sales tactic. Software vendors like Microsoft are trying to force their customers off legacy products onto their newer products, partly because it's more profitable for them to have you move to the new product, in this case, Microsoft D365, but also because it's impossible for an organization like Microsoft to maintain effectively multiple systems. So that's a big part of it too, is they want their R&D dollars to go into one platform rather than spreading themselves too thin, trying to focus on Great Plains, Navision, Exapta, and other legacy products, rather than just putting all that R&D money into D365. So that's a big driver of it as well. But regardless of what the vendor self-interest might be, you really have to look at your self-interest. What is it that you need as an organization? What makes the most sense for you? And one thing that we notice in the market is that a lot of times Microsoft Great Plains customers operate with a sense of panic. They feel like that they absolutely have to be completely migrated off that system by 2028. Well, it would be ideal if you could be off a unsupported product by the time the product becomes unsupported. It's not the end of the world if you have some sort of overlap. It does put your business at risk, of course. There's some definite risk to it, but you need to operate at a pace that makes the most sense to you. And too many times organizations will operate with such a sense of panic in trying to move away from a sunsetted product that they end up implementing a new product very poorly. And so what you really have to do is assess the risk of both situations. If I remain on this old product for longer than I'd like, how does that risk compare to the risk of implementing a solution more quickly than our organization is able to consume? Now, presumably, if you've been using Great Plains for a long time, you've had years or decades to get used to that solution, to mold it to fit your business and your operations, whereas a new product like D365 or any other ERP system in the marketplace is going to be a lot different than Great Plains, and it's going to require some adjustment and some learning from your organization. So the key here is to really operate at your own pace, not at the vendor's pace, but your pace. Yes, you need to be aware that Microsoft will no longer support the product after 2028, but then again, a lot of organizations are still using products that haven't been supported for decades. I would not recommend that by any means, but it can be done, and a lot of organizations do that. You just have to assess the risk of both situations and do what's best for you. Now let's assume that you've decided that you are indeed going to move away from Microsoft Great Plains in the near future. The next question becomes, what system do you look at? And one of the natural options that organizations look to is Microsoft. If we already use Microsoft Great Plains, why not look at the latest and greatest from Microsoft, which would be Microsoft Dynamics 365? And one thing that Microsoft and its network of value-added resellers are doing is that they're convincing organizations that it's a simple upgrade. You're just upgrading from Great Plains to D365. And unfortunately, that's not true at all. Great Plains and D365 are totally different platforms, totally different systems, different underlying technologies, different functional capabilities, different strengths, different weaknesses, and it's just going to be a re-implementation of technology. Not to say that D365 isn't the answer for you, it may very well be, and a lot of organizations that are comfortable with Microsoft and are already Microsoft shops are going to naturally gravitate towards D365 as an option. But even if you do choose D365, you want to make sure that you recognize that it's not a simple upgrade, and you want to treat it and plan for it and invest in it as though it's a full-on implementation, because that's exactly what it is. Now, perhaps you find that D365 is not an option you're interested in, or even if you are interested in evaluating D365, you want to make sure you understand what your options are. There's a lot of options out there beyond D365 that'll allow you to automate your business and help you scale for growth. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail here of what the strengths and weaknesses are of all the different systems in the marketplace, but I encourage you to check out my YouTube channel for reviews and rankings of different ERP systems. And you can also download our digital transformation report that I mentioned earlier in this video that provides more independent reviews and rankings of different systems. But the point here is to recognize that there are a lot of options in the marketplace. You have your tier 1 options, which are the bigger ERP software providers like Microsoft that provide D365 and others. But you also have SAP and Oracle as 2 other examples that provide broad system capabilities for larger organizations. If you're a smaller or mid-sized organization, though, you also have other options beyond D365. You have Infor and Epicor, Workday, and other tier 2 solutions that are built more for the mid-market and even smaller organizations as well. In addition, there's a whole host of best-of-breed solutions that focus on individual pieces of a business. There's also industry-specific solutions that focus on manufacturing or government or financial services or whatever your industry might be. So you have a lot of options to choose from. So I encourage you to make sure that you are exploring options and understand what the strengths and weaknesses are of those options against your business needs and your business requirements. Now, once you've evaluated your options and you've defined the system that you think is going to help you best get to a future state that does not involve Microsoft Great Plains, next you need to make sure you have a very solid transition or implementation plan. And there's a few things to note here about your implementation plan. You want to make sure that you are realistic in that implementation plan, that you have realistic assumptions and realistic understanding of what the time and cost and effort might be to deploy the technology and the process changes that go along with that. You also want to make sure that your plan includes time to define your future state, so defining what your future state business processes are going to be, especially if you're in a situation where you've outgrown and maybe even broken Great Plains to the point that it doesn't support your business anymore. That's even more important and more reason for you to define what your future state is so that you have a clear vision of how you're going to deploy that new technology to support your business going forward. And then the last thing I'll mention here is you want to make sure you have a solid change management plan too. Because as I mentioned, even if you're moving to Microsoft D365, and especially if you're moving to a non-Microsoft product, the change impact to the organization and to the people in your organization is going to be a lot greater than you might think. And so you want to make sure you have a solid change management plan, one that allows you to mitigate risk and ultimately implement that replacement solution as efficiently and effectively as possible. Now, for more best practices and lessons about what it takes to make an implementation successful, I encourage you to download the guide to a successful Microsoft D365 implementation if that's the direction you think you'd like to go, or if that's not the direction you think you'll go, another option is to download our Lessons from 1000 ERP Implementations book. These are both free downloads. I've included links to those below, and both of these resources are meant to help you understand what the best practices and lessons are from other ERP implementations throughout the world and help you just understand what it takes to be successful as you migrate away from Great Plains into another solution. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. Is cutting off support in 2028. Yes. Because they feel like that. Man, I'm just losing my train of thought big time today.